Well, there has been news from Washington, D.C. regarding Christopher Columbus and statues. If you recall back in 2020, during all the riots that occurred around the country, many people on the left used the opportunity of protest to cancel anything from which they disagree or with which they disagreed. For many cities where Italian Americans comprised a large portion of the population, people decided to tear down statues of Christopher Columbus, not even understanding anything the man stood for. While the Italian American community in Baltimore, well, they wouldn't have it. In spite of the fact that rioters in Baltimore City broke up that city's Christopher Columbus statue and tossed it into Baltimore's Inner Harbor, the community couldn't be stopped. Members retrieved as many chunks of the statue that they could and reassembled it piece by piece. And while the somewhat radical leadership in the city refused to allow the community to publicly display the statue in Baltimore, President Trump stepped in, and now Christopher Columbus has a place on the White House grounds outside the Dwight D. Eisenhower Executive Office building. And to talk about that and more is Andre Dimino, who is president of the Italian American One Voice Coalition. Always great to have you on, Andre. Good morning.
Good to see you again, Ken, especially with this great news.
Yeah. So, why do you think uh, the rioters in Baltimore refused to allow the Columbus statue to be put back on display there, considering there's a big number of Italian Americans in the Baltimore metro, 160,000? It's not just some tiny number. That is a big number of the population.
Well, they're still going back to that falsehoods about Columbus, and the facts that they have about him are just incorrect. And unfortunately, politicians, city leaders, and so forth, they just don't want to deal with the fact that it's incorrect information about Columbus, so they rather just try to wipe him away. But fortunately, that statue, which was resurrected out of the ashes of the harbor, is now on full display at the White House grounds, and we're very, very happy about that.
Yeah, just to clarify for everybody, number one, Christopher Columbus was never himself a slave owner ever. He never enslaved anyone personally himself. People who came after him, yes, including some people who were part of the future expeditions who, when he was the first. So people who came after him, some of them did bring back slaves. Christopher Columbus didn't. So why are we attacking Christopher Columbus? And then number two, I know that a lot of people attack him, Christopher, on the use of the term savage, but a lot of people don't understand the translation. And he wrote it in Spanish and in Latin. The word salvatus in Latin, and I'm trying to think what it is in Spanish. I'm forgetting now at the top of my head, and I speak Spanish. But it means saved or salvation. It means somebody who was not previously Christian, who was baptized, and they become a Christian. So when explorers came to islands and found people who had never been exposed to Christianity, the people there are referred to as salvati or savages in the French and English. Doesn't mean that they're animals. It means they had not been baptized. So it's because people don't understand the translation of language. They think, oh, those racist people from Europe thought they were savages. Yeah, look up the word savage.
Well, in fact, if you check the facts, you'll see that Columbus actually preserved and helped the Taino tribe against the Carib tribe, who they were cannibals. And he actually defended the Taino tribe. And a lot of these falsehoods were totally debunked by an indigenous person himself who's written 4 books defending Columbus, Rafael Ortiz. So that's why we tell people
Mhm.
check the facts and don't go with this brainwashing that's been going on for so long.
And the Italian American One Voice Coalition did a very smart thing in terms of Italian Americans love Native Americans. This is not a matter of a fight between the two. On the contrary, Italian Americans and Native Americans share a lot in terms of family values, etc. And I know that the Native American Guardian Association and the Italian American One Voice Coalition work together on this, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a milestone alliance that started back in 2024, whereby we connected with them because, the Native Americans, they want to preserve their heritage as well. Names like the Chiefs and the Redskins that are being wiped out from town, schools and so forth and teams, they want those back. So the way that they want to preserve their heritage, we want to preserve Columbus as our symbol. And we've now formed this alliance where we work together in unity and not against each other. So we want to celebrate Indigenous people and Native Americans on their own time and leave Columbus Day and Columbus to us.
Yeah. I mean, listen, America is America because of our indigenous population, our native people, and God bless them. And yes, some horrible things did happen, and there's no question. It's part of the history. What we do as Americans, though, is we don't erase it. That's not the way you deal with issues. You correct it. And we fought a civil war to correct the sin that was slavery, and we fixed it. We got rid of it. Is there still many miles ahead to go? Yes. But the fact is that as a country, we realized, hey, this is not what we're going to do as a people. And we slap ourselves for it and we correct it. And that's what we do. And the same thing with Christopher Columbus. You're trying to look at Christopher Columbus, not you, but people are trying to look at him through a prism, through a lens from 2026, when you need to look at him through a lens of the 1500s. And when you do that, you realize, if anything, he was considered a radical on the other side because he was being so kind about the people whom he encountered. There were many people who said just enslave them all. That's not what he did personally at all.
Well, Columbus really, of course, is so important to Italian Americans because he was the symbol of an apology or an atonement for the terrible treatment that Italian immigrants had, especially the largest single day lynching that ever occurred. That's why in 1892, the first Columbus Day was proclaimed by President Harrison to honor and atone to Italian American immigrants. And that's why for our ancestors, we got to continue to preserve that iconic symbol. But also, don't forget, he united the continents. That was like going to the moon back then. And really, it's really an attack on Western culture, not just Italian Americans when they go after Christopher Columbus.
Entirely. And I'm glad you pointed that out, that it's not like Italian Americans said, we're going to select this man to represent us. It was the President of the United States and Congress that selected Christopher Columbus as the representative of Italians and named him so and created the day. And now a previous president, or two of them, and Congress are trying to take that away. Stop it. Just
Well,
stop it, because we can find sin in every culture. What we should do is seize on the benefits and the pluses from those cultures.
Well, and talking about presidents, of course, this past October, President Trump did come out with a full proclamation defending Columbus Day completely, and we were very pleased to see that. And I don't know if you know, but back then actually started the process of getting a statue at the White House, where the Conference of Presidents of major Italian American organizations, of which our organization is a member, was approached to get a statue, and they looked around and they worked with the people in Baltimore to get that statue brought to the White House. And now we have President Trump, who brought that statue to the White House grounds, thanks to Basil Russo and the Conference of Presidents of major Italian American organizations. So now we've got a physical representation, a very tangible representation of the connection of us to that Christopher Columbus iconic symbol.
Amen. Amen. All right. The organization is the Italian American One Voice Coalition, IAOVC.org. Andre Dimino, president of the Italian American One Voice Coalition. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Ken.